is a reckoning that is happening right now. CNN's most famous news anchor, his name is Jake Tapper. He has straight up admitted that there were 2 Joe Bidens. Well, what's this about? 2 Joe Bidens? Boy, that sounds very interesting. It's like almost like something that we've been talking about on this program for years. We've shown you photos like this of Joe Biden in the same place, same set, same suit, but 2 very different people. This was within hours of each other, these photos. The video is even more startling when you watch Joe Biden, 2 very different people, different voices, different eye sockets, different pupils, different everything, get trotted out to give messages. Listen to this.
Can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop. Bringing down gas prices is a big part of the job. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-democracy. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-American. And here's the good news. Gas prices have dropped every day this summer. That's more than 40 days in a row. Donald Trump lacked the courage to act. We now have 40,000 gas stations in the United States where the price of gas is $3.99 or less. The brave women and men in blue.
You get it. What were they doing to Joe Biden? Well, there's only 2 options here. One is a very highly medicated Joe Biden where he's unblinking. You'll notice there his pupils don't move. They're pinned back. His voice is totally different. Or there's 2 Joe Bidens. Somebody in a rubber mask wandering out, talking about being Joe Biden, and it's not really Joe Biden. But now CNN's Jake Tapper is out saying there's 2 Joe Bidens? Boy, what is this about? Let's go ahead and research here, shall we? Let's go ahead and look at what Joe Biden is doing and how he is debasing and humiliating himself. But how Megyn Kelly has called Jake Tapper to the carpet, and now he's telling the truth. In fact, he's apologizing to us. Again, we're gasping in the novelty of it all. I just can't really believe it. Jake Tapper has admitted that there were 2 Joe Bidens in the White House. Here's his explanation. This is aired on Megyn Kelly's show just a short time ago.
The criticism has been that you're complaining about a cover-up about Joe Biden's mental acuity that failed, that right-wing pundits saw, the right wing in general saw, that independent media saw and reported on, and that was no mystery even to left-wing and so-called mainstream reporters who were not fooled but chose willful blindness instead of honest reporting, and that you were part of it. How do you respond?
It's a tough and fair question. I would say that Alex and I, after Election Day, interviewed more than 200 people, 200 mostly Democratic insiders, and almost all of these interviews were after the election. And they justified to themselves what they had done in terms of misrepresenting how the president was, not just to me and Alex and other reporters, but also just to each other and to the world and to Democrats and to the cabinet, et cetera, by saying that there was this existential threat of Donald Trump and only Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump, and that justified everything in their minds. After that existential threat was over, because the election was over and Donald Trump won, we found, Alex and myself, remarkably willing to talk to us either off the record or on background, or in some cases on the record, about what they saw. One of the things that emerged was that there were 2 Bidens. One was the fine Biden, serviceable, adequate, and the other one was a non-functioning Biden, and that's the one we saw the night of the debate. And that's the one we saw some clips of here and there that you just showed. And that non-functioning Biden, the one that lost his train of thought in a significant way, not in the way just that every human loses their train of thought, but in a way that shows that he's having trouble articulating his very views. and the one who forgot the name of close aides, who was not able to come up with George Clooney's name, didn't seem to recognize him, all that sort of thing. That non-functioning Biden was, according to our reporting, showed up as far back as 2015, after the death of Beau, where one top aide said that tragedy, the loss of Beau, was like watching somebody pour water on sand. That was the effect on his psyche. And there were other moments, 2017, 2018, you hear Her report, one of the reasons he came to that conclusion was because of the recordings they heard of Joe Biden in 2017 talking to his ghostwriter, in which he was similarly inclined. Obviously in 2019, 2020, there were other moments like that. Most of his campaign staff and others would say, like, he's 78, he's 79, he has senior moments, but he's fine. Well, he wasn't fine. And throughout his presidency, that non-functioning Biden would show up more and more and more, and he was worse and worse and worse, really deteriorating tremendously the next time there was a really horrible family incident, which was when Hunter Biden's plea deal fell apart in the summer of 2023. And then obviously in June, he was convicted. And the fear of losing his son, not to jail, but maybe to a relapse, to an overdose, to a suicide, who knows, was a very real fear. Transparent at all. No.
He promised you that he would be transparent about his health records, and then he wasn't. And when you sat with him again,
at all.
including 1 month after the Jackie Walorski thing, you didn't ask him about it. You didn't follow up on the fact that he was falling up the stairs, that he was losing his train of thought regularly, that he was slurring, that he was incomprehensible, that he was getting lost on the White House lawn. You sat right across from him and you asked none of that, notwithstanding the fact that he had promised you he would be fully transparent about his health issues.
That's true. But I did ask him about his age and the fact that the American people had concluded that, even though he said whenever anybody brought up the subject of his age, watch me. And I said,
yes,
they're watching you and they are concerned that you were too old for this job.
But you know as well as I do that there's a way of, you can say, hey, there's this poll on your age, or you could say, you just forgot that Jackie Walorski was dead. You asked where she was moments after watching a videotape tribute to her. You lowered the flags at the White House after she died. This happened 13 days before you sat with him. There is a way of pressing a man like that on the actual infirmities to bring it home to him and to the audience, and you didn't do it.
That's correct. I didn't. And like I said, I feel humility about my coverage. I mean, it's not like I was asking him his favorite movie or his favorite color. We were talking about Putin. We were talking about other issues of national importance. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've said, I look back at my coverage with humility. And I wish I did cover the issues of age and acuity, but I wish I had covered them much more. And I wish, I mean, of course, it's May 2025. Do I wish that in that 10, 15-minute interview I had with Biden in October 2022, that this had been the only subject? Because I had then
well, it wasn't
what I know
just that,
now.
though, Jake. It wasn't just that. I mean, you sat with him a couple of times in the course of his presidency, and these issues were not pressed. Well, there was at least that time, and then there was the time at the beginning.
So there are two Bidens. Got it. None of this really answers the question, however, of why you covered it up, Jake. Jake Tapper got a lot of access to Joe Biden, a lot of sit-downs with Joe Biden, picnic time with Joe Biden. Jake Tapper never said, hey, why do you walk like a robot, exactly? Jake Tapper never asked about the two Bidens, right? Why do you walk like this? Jake Tapper, in his position, had an opportunity to really do something important for the country. Not now that it's convenient and we all know what's going on, but back when it could have meant something, when it could have actually changed the direction of the country. It's called courage under fire. It doesn't matter when the game's over. If you make a play on the field and the game's over now, the gig is up. There's even rumors of a Biden apology tour that may well happen. It's pretty remarkable here. You You have a president who walks up to the press and literally says, "My butt's been wiped." That's what he says. And we were going through some of the clips of Joe Biden. It's actually remarkable what we have. But just a reminder that Joe Biden went and walked up and said, "My butt's been wiped" to the press, and Jake Tapper went along with it. Here's Joe Biden doing that.
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
Great. Jake Tapper thought that was great for a president to do. He thought that was normal. This is smart to do. Good job, Mr. President, says Jake Tapper. What a complete fraud. Megyn Kelly called him out to his face, and something quite remarkable happened. Then Jake Tapper apologized to the Trump family. Here we go.
Do you want to apologize to Lara Trump now?
I've already apologized to her. I called her months ago.
And what did she say?
I mean, I don't want to disclose the contents of a private conversation, but I thought the conversation went well. And she has said this publicly, so I feel fine of sharing it. She said that she would never mock anybody's stutter. But I mean, after we did the research for this book and I realized how bad his acuity issues were, I called Lara Trump and I said, you were right.
She was totally right. That's the thing, because when I watched that clip, and I'm giving voice to what a lot of people watching the show are feeling, Jake, I feel angry because she was right. And not only did you not allow her to make her comments, but you seemed to try to humiliate her. You had a hostility toward the position, but she was totally right. And then you lectured her on how she was in no position to diagnose cognitive decline, which you guys do at length, including on page 4 of your book. You describe at length his cognitive decline, which is all she tried to do with you. But you had such a visceral reaction to her. And my feeling is that's because you didn't want to hear it.
No, I'm happy to talk about this. I didn't come here thinking that you weren't going to ask me about this. So I'm happy to talk to you about it.
No, I know.
The first time I saw the coverage of Lara Trump's comments, which were interpreted as her mocking Joe Biden's stutter, was in January 2020. I read it in conservative media. I read it in the Daily Mail. And that's where I saw that her comments were being interpreted that way. After those comments were publicized, it got a lot of coverage. And Sully Sullenberger wrote an op-ed in the New York Times criticizing her about this. So that's the context for that, that I was following up on a story that had been out there months before. This is also in the context of October 2020, a very intense time. People on the Biden side are saying crazy things about Trump. People on the Trump side are saying crazy things about Biden, including Don Jr. suggesting that Joe Biden is a pedophile. So that is the larger context. But as I said, her comments have aged well. My comments have aged poorly. I own that.
So does Jake Tapper own every time that he sat down with Joe Biden to do an interview, never asking once about how Joe Biden forgot where the Oval Office was? And just for character reference, here's the clip at hand that is being asked about by Megyn Kelly. It's a clip of Lara Trump saying correctly that Joe Biden is in complete and total collapse. This is, of course, before the 2020 election, if you can call it that. And Jake Tapper being a smug a-hole to Lara Trump.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You are
to watch somebody on stage search for
That's so
questions
amazing. It's so amazing to me
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter.
Yeah,
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think
I'm not
that
diagnosing,
somebody in
I'm
the
saying
Trump
that
family
he
would be more
thinks Joe
sensitive
Biden of
to people who
today
do not have
is
medical
not the Joe
licenses,
Biden of 5
diagnosing
years ago,
politicians
of 10
from
years ago.
afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar, I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing
I'm
to
not
say.
diagnosing him. What I'm saying,
You
Jake,
just talked
is
about
that
a
we
cognitive
can clearly
decline.
see that Joe Biden
I have
is
one last
struggling
question for you, Laura. You
at
can't.
many times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely
Thank you,
feel
Laura
sorry
Trump.
for Joe Biden at
I
times.
appreciate it. I'm sure.
Makes you angry watching that. So this is it makes your blood boil. The difference in how they're treated. You would never hear Jake Tapper talk to a Democrat like that. You see how diminutive he is to Laura Trump? How sneering and sniveling he is. I don't care if he called and apologized. That clip is grotesque. And of course, again, Laura Trump is right and he's having to eat crow. Megyn Kelly then got to work on Jake Tapper and went in very, very severely on Jake Tapper refusing to ask tough questions of Joe Biden when he had Joe Biden live on air. Here's a great segment.
And like I said, I feel humility about my coverage. I mean, it's not like I was asking him his favorite movie or his favorite color. We were talking about Putin. We were talking about other issues of national importance. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've said I look back at my coverage with humility, and I wish I did cover the issues of age and acuity, but I wish I had covered them much more. And I wish, I mean, of course, it's May 2025. Do I wish that in that 10, 15-minute interview I had with Biden in October 2022, that this had been the only subject because I had then
well, it wasn't
what I know
just that,
now?
though, Jake. It wasn't just that. I mean, you sat with him a couple of times in the course of his presidency, and these issues were not pressed. Well, there was at least that time, and then there was the time at the beginning. And but separate and apart from that, you covered the Biden's presidency. No. Let me just finish my point. You covered the Biden presidency.
With him during his I had one interview with him
and it was
during his
13 days
presidency.
after the Jackie Walorski thing. But you covered the Biden presidency aggressively throughout the 4 years, and you didn't cover mental acuity hardly at all. I mean, time and time again, when issues came up, you seemed to be running cover for the president. You didn't seem interested.
Jackie Walorski is a member of Congress that died, and Joe Biden, who had just been at her funeral, got up on stage and asked, "Where's Jackie?" It's a really incredible clip. It's really something. "Where's Jackie?" Biden asks, referring to Jackie Walorski, who died in a car accident in August. The White House had played a tribute video to her, and Joe Biden's asking, where is she? And Jake Tapper interviewed Joe Biden right after this. I gotta play it. Everyone's already seen it, but Jake Tapper didn't ask about this at all. Interesting. But now when he can make a buck off of Biden's diseased corpse, Jake Tapper's all in. What a fraud. Something I never thought I'd see in my life, however, Jake Tapper apologizing to us. Jake Tapper apologized to conservative media. So I guess if you're using that as a pejorative, you would be what? Liberal media, right? That's the battle. Jake Tapper apologized to us, which is crazy. He said that we had it right and he had it wrong. And so I suppose I'll take the W here. Jake Tapper.
I will acknowledge that after I was named co-moderator of the debate, I tried to make sure that my coverage was fairly vanilla, both about Trump and about Biden, because I just wanted to get to the debate. And, the Biden people and the Trump people, I'm kind of frankly surprised that either one of them agreed to have me as a moderator, because both sides disliked me so much. But yeah, I remember that moment. And I remember that moment, the glitch at the immigration event, and not getting much attention outside of conservative media at all. And Alex and I are here to say that conservative media was right and conservative media was correct. and that there should be a lot of soul searching, not just among me, but among the legacy media to begin with, all of us, for how this was covered or not covered sufficiently. 100%. So, I mean, I'm not here to defend coverage that I've already acknowledged I wish I could do differently.
Mm-hmm. Let me bring Alex in. Thank you for your patience, Alex, and apologies for the back.
I think he's fine.
Jake and
I think he's fine.
The audience may not be aware of this based on what just happened, but Jake and I are actually friends, and this is all said in, look, the context of I know what my audience wants to hear asked, and Jake has told me before he wanted the opportunity to answer these questions. So that's what we're doing.
Megyn, we didn't come on the show thinking that this was going to be a softball interview. I understand. Like, listen. First of all, nobody flagellates Jake Tapper more than Jake Tapper. Okay, like I get it. I understand. I am fallible. I make mistakes. It's not just the Biden coverage. I mean, I go back and I look at, like, I wish I had been covering terrorism more before 9/11. I wish that I had covered the WMD with more skepticism. And there's, a million things. This is definitely among them. And conservative media absolutely has every right to say we were hip to this and the legacy media was not. Now, I do not accept that I was part of a cover-up. I do not accept that I was just providing cover for Joe Biden. I think a lot of these clips are not fair. The one that is fair is the Laura Trump clip, and I own it.
Well, you did. You did. I mean, it's hard for us to even rationalize what a world would be like if Donald Trump was slipping and falling on his face, slipping and falling down the stairs, incapable of speaking, incapable of controlling his bowel movements, starting wars, getting American service members killed. And, like, how would we cover that? Well, of course, you'd cover it. We'd cover every second of it. And we'd say, this is awful. I mean, maybe, like, some of it's like out of care. Out of just care for someone. You want to say, like, they're clearly non-compos matters. They can't be president. If you can't put a sentence together, if you can't walk off a stage, if you can't walk across a stage, something horrible has happened. But Jake Tapper didn't cover that. Jake Tapper looked the other way. He's, of course, part of a cover-up. I'm glad that Megyn Kelly put her boot in his ass. I'm sorry to hear that they're friends. I'm not friends with Jake Tapper. We should invite him on our show. Let's give him the exact same treatment. Except for the difference, I suppose, would be, why are you getting away with this cover-up? He was clearly a cover-up. Jake Tapper's going to have to point to a single piece of reporting, a single time. He did an hour-long show on CNN every single night for the last 4 years. He's going to have to point to a single time that he led his show, or even had a B, D, or C block in his show, where he said Joe Biden doesn't have the mental acuity, the sharpness, the ability to be president. We think they're lying to us about Joe Biden's health. But that doesn't exist. There is no show like that. He never did that. He allowed all of these things to happen, and he liked it. He was part of the cover-up, and now he's trying to make a quick buck off of it. It's really humiliating. Here's Jake Tapper. I've saved this clip for last because it's Jake Tapper talking about how dumb Joe Biden is and how stupid Joe Biden is. Again, it's amazing how convenient it is to go on Megyn Kelly's successful show after the fact to try and make money off of saying Joe Biden's stupid. Where were you the last 4 years? You were part of a cover-up. I don't buy it. I don't accept it. Jake Tapper is a fraud, and a filthy fraud. Jake Tapper is scum. He tries to robe himself in the American flag and say that he's a patriot and he defends the troops and defends the soldiers and he loves the soldiers so much. He writes books and makes money about that too. But he didn't say jack about Afghanistan. But yeah, they're complete frauds. So here it is, Jake Tapper. Joe Biden was so stupid. Okay, now it'll cost him nothing.
The comments of Joe Biden making gaffes, saying things stupid, tripping, are all important and all deserved to be aired and all deserve scrutiny. But as you know, Megyn, because even though you look 30 years younger than me, we're roughly the same age, Joe Biden has been saying stupid things for decades. Okay?
I get what you're saying, but this minimizes it too, because it was more than saying stupid things. But I'm telling you, like over here in my ecosphere, we were covering all of these. It wasn't just falling down. It was getting lost. It was some of the stuff you report in your book. We knew and we were reporting on, like the multi-jump cuts in the videos of him, where it was obvious he couldn't get through a 1-minute take. So they had to use those. It was clear to us that he was using teleprompter and there was some reporting on that at the time, all of which the White House was denying. Now, with the current White House, I have some connections. With the Joe Biden White House, I had none. But you did. You did. And so while you've been in Washington 30 years, Jake, you guys, you and CNN have White House connections, but there was no effort, none, to get to the bottom of this. And now for you guys to write this book like there was a cover up, it's like there was a cover up and there was an attempted cover up. It could only ever work if you allowed it.
There. Now that's the Megyn Kelly I want to show you. I've asked my producers to source a couple other clips that I found very interesting about this interview. But that's what needs to be exposed here. Everyone's well aware, nobody, like, it's a snooze fest. You can't, nobody will even watch or click if you're like, there's a White House cover-up of Biden's health. We all knew that. It was self-evident. It was demonstrable. What's important right now is that gremlin frauds like Jake Tapper are going out to try and make money off of what he covered up. The Babylon Bee article from, I think, yesterday saying that Jake Tapper is about to write a book that Joe Biden has cancer. It'll be out in a year. It's like, why are we allowing this? It's totally degrading, and they should be held into great contempt and shame over this. I know you already hold CNN in great contempt and shame, but I'm glad that Megyn Kelly isn't letting him get away with it. There are stronger clips of Megyn Kelly really getting out the buzzsaw on Jake Tapper. So obviously Jake Tapper's, this was the famous debate where Joe Biden just completely and totally collapsed. Jake Tapper's response to the debate that he moderated with Joe Biden that ended his political career. Here we go.
Been in the front row of a presidential debate in big moments. And
I remember.
One of the interesting things is always like, what's the dynamic between the anchors on the set when you know big news is being made? So walk us through that moment when he completely fell apart with the I killed Medicare, and everybody was left with their own agape moment.
I guess presumably your viewers and listeners know the agape reference by now. So that front row seat was really disturbing. And again, as you say, we all watched President Biden age. We all watched his gaffes. We all watched these moments that were uncomfortable and obviously representative of a decline going on. But there was something about that debate that was utterly shocking. And maybe you and your listeners were not shocked. Maybe you thought that this was going to happen and this was all.
I think it was one of those shocked but not surprised moments for us.
So he comes out and, he's obviously shuffling, as had been going on with him for years because of his degenerative spine. And although, by the way, that was another thing that the White House wasn't being honest about. They were saying it had to do with his, breaking his ankle or something in December 2020, and not wearing
his
the boot
refusal
or
to
something.
wear the foot cast or support. Yeah, there's another one.
Not true. Yeah, not true. So he comes out and he has a cold also, and he sounds, so even his voice, obviously, go back and listen to him. In 2020, his voice is much deeper and more and stronger. And then, he comes out, it's thinner, it's reedier. He obviously is coughing a lot. But there was
My
something
first
about
text
that
to
moment.
my producing team read phlegm, and I saw that same word in your book referencing what you were thinking.
It was phlegmy. He was definitely very phlegmy. But it was a few minutes in. I mean, his first answer was not good, but that wasn't ultimately particularly surprising. I think it was the second answer, the second long answer in that economics block that we did, where he just completely lost his train of thought. In such a way that he was like grasping for words. And look, he has those crutches where he starts wandering off and then he says anyway, because he's lost his train of thought. That's something that we've seen. But this was something else. This was something more shocking. And he says, we finally beat Medicare. And I presumably he was trying to say we finally beat COVID, but it was really shocking. Also interesting at the time was Trump obviously was very Trumpy during the debate. He did his thing. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. For Trump, given what was going on to his left, he was fairly restrained. He wasn't really commenting on the self-immolation that was going on. I think he only made one comment that night about Biden's incoherence.
That's
He said something like, I'm not really sure what he just said, and I'm not sure that he does either, or something like that.
It's pretty wild, man. I think I'm not trying to find something nice to say about Jake Tapper. I'm not. I'll let you know. Giving it to Jake Tapper, both barrel. Like I don't like Jake Tapper. But you will recall, and I recall, that the debate questions on CNN for the Biden-Trump debate, that those were real questions.